Because most people think, thanks to glyphosate and thanks to Norman Borlaug and thanks to, chemicals and all this, oh, we can feed ourselves. When actually, North America produced more food 500 years ago than it does today. It was a shock to everyone in the clean food movement, I'll just say, when President Trump issued the executive order to elevate glyphosate to a brand of national security. In the history of the U.S., there has never been a single brand elevated to the point of national security. It's always been a sector of enterprises. Car companies, you need to start making tanks, or precious metals, you need to start doing this. It's a segment of it's never been a specific brand. So this is unprecedented, this executive order elevating glyphosate to a place of national security. So what happened? Well, what happened was EPA, long time ago, said glyphosate is safe. Monsanto, of course, invented glyphosate as an herbicide and started selling it. Well, it takes a while. Nature's very forgiving, and lots of times there's a bit of an accordion effect. You have an abuse or a toxin. It takes a while for it to show up. I mean, it took 40 years for DDT to show up in eagle eggs, and Rachel Carson to write about it, and then it took that long to finally ban it. All right, that's a long slinky. Glyphosate's in the same deal, all right? Monsanto did the research. Their scientists, of course, did all the paperwork for EPA. EPA says, yeah, that looks good. Stamped it, boom, it's all right, it's safe. It doesn't have any harmful side effects. 20 years down the road, we've got people that have been using it their lifetime, and these people start getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Where'd this come from? They start putting two and two together. They start talking, and wow, what's common? Well, we all use glyphosate. We all use Roundup. So they get together, and lawsuits start. And of course, Monsanto says, well, EPA says it's safe, so we shouldn't be liable for a product that the EPA says is safe. So that was the initial battle, and then Monsanto began losing. And there was a direct link, and it was held liable in courts. Huge damage, multi-million-dollar settlements. And then Monsanto was sold to Bayer, the German company, which, by the way, made the gas that was used to gas the Jews in the Holocaust chambers. That was Bayer. So they've got a great reputation. So Bayer buys Monsanto, and with all this potential tort litigation looking at them, we'll beat them. Well, they didn't beat them, and they started losing, and they lost, and they lost, and they lost. So they developed a $10 billion war chest to try to settle out of court. And they've settled about 50,000 cases out of court. There's still about 54,000 active cases, enough to basically bankrupt the company that won't settle, that are going to go to court. Now I'm going to kind of speculate theatrically. If I were Bayer, here's what I think developed. Okay, what I've said so far is fact. Now I'm going to kind of say what I think developed. So I'm a Bayer board member. Well, what do we deal with this? We thought we'd win in court, and we're not winning in court. We're in trouble. So let's try to indemnify ourselves in the Farm Bill. So they put in language in the Farm Bill back in 2025 to say that if any chemical is deemed safe by the EPA, that the maker has a liability shield against anything that might show that it's a problem in the future. Well, the word got out. They tried to slip it in, the word got out, and it got stripped from the Farm Bill. Oh, shoot. Well, we tried judicial, and it didn't work. We tried legislative, it didn't work. Let's try executive. So they go to Trump. And based on the outfit called Truth in Government, they've uncovered 45 high-level people, including Susie Wiles, who's Trump's, strategist, who've gotten paychecks from Bayer. 45 within Trump's inner, his group. And so they go to Trump, and he's surrounded by all these people that have worked for Bayer that thinks it's wonderful. And so he does an executive order. Bingo! We got the deal. And so they got this executive order signed. Now, meanwhile, these appeals are working through the courts, and this executive order is issued, 45 days before the Supreme Court hearing, the final appeal on the Supreme Court hearing. It's not a blanket appeal. It's like most things, it's a very narrow legal question. Of course, Monsanto, Bayer, and Trump, all of them say that this executive order had nothing to do with the Supreme Court case. But I just want you to think of what a position it puts the justices in, the Supreme Court justices in, to sit there. If they rule against Bayer, the basic ramification is this is a bad product. So think about the political gymnastics at very high levels when you have a president who says this product is necessary for civilizational survival, and this branch of government says this is a deadly bad product. I mean, that's scientific and political schizophrenia at the highest levels, all right? But that's where we are right now. That's exactly where we are now. We don't have a ruling yet from the Supreme Court. Heard the rulings. Of course, Trump sent a bunch of people down there to file amicus briefs and be friendly with it. But the biggest mistake so far I see in the whole thing has been RFK Jr.'s endorsement of the president's executive order, agreeing this is necessary for civilizational survival. It has nothing to do with civilizational survival. How long have humans lived without glyphosate? It's such a lie. It's ridiculous. And it's mainly used, its biggest customer is Roundup Ready soybeans. Half of the soybean crop in the U.S. is sold to foreign markets. We're producing twice as many soybeans as we need in our country. We could stop half of our soybean production tomorrow, and it wouldn't affect our domestic food at all. Clearly, this is not necessary for civilizational survival. It's not necessary for food security. It's not necessary for any of this stuff. And so what this is farmers who are too uncreative to imagine a different model, cowed by slick advertisements, free wine and dine dinners and farm conferences to tell them how important this is, how necessary it is, and you can't do anything without it, that then filters up, or percolates up to the farm state senators. I got this directly from Callie Means. He said that the core of the Republican power in the Senate are the farm state senators. Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. And those 10 or 12 senators absolutely control everything regarding farm policy. Well, Bayer, Farm Bureau Federation, the chemical companies, the fertilizer companies, the seed companies, they're the agribusiness, what we call big ag, and we've got big pharma, big food, big ag. I asked, which is worse, or which is a bigger, swamp, big pharma or big ag? I thought it was big pharma. He said no, big ag is 10 times worse than big pharma. And so what we've got is big ag controlling this core of these Republican senators that, of course, is the core for Trump's agenda and it all works together to create this. Glyphosate is now at the apex of this cultural question: can we grow food without chemicals? That is the cultural question at stake, and right now glyphosate is the tip of that spear, and that's where we are in the political scene. Well, first of all, the U.S. doesn't need but half of the soybeans it produces. It only needs half the corn it produces. I mean, almost, well, at least 40% of our corn goes into ethanol. We're not even eating it. So this notion that this is necessary for food is just, it's a complete spurious argument. How fast could it be withdrawn? I think could be withdrawn tomorrow, pretty drastically. I guess where I am is what we need to withdraw are government subsidies, because the subsidies prop up bad decisions. I was in Iowa, and I was invited there to speak by a financial group that handles like 3,500 farm properties. And they had like 1,200 conventional corn and soybean farmers there. When I found out who was going to be there, I asked the guy who invited me, the guy in charge, said, "Are you sure you want me to come? You know, this is a kind of hostile audience." He said, "Oh, no." He said, we want to make people think." Oh, it's great. Okay. So I go there and I do my thing. And his feedback at the end of the day was a third of the people liked it, a third of the people weren't quite sure, and a third of the people hated it. So the next morning, I'm getting ready to board the plane to fly home, and there were about a dozen attendees there. All, we were all leaving, the next morning after the conference. And one guy, grabbed me. He said, "I want to tell you what happened to me yesterday. I'm sitting at this." So everybody's in tables of 8, round tables of 8, in this massive big conference center hall. And he said, of the 8 people at my table, I was the only one that was really enjoying what you were saying about, non-chemicals and compost and cattle and everything else to all these corn and soybean farmers, and no subsidies. And he said, I was eating it up. The other 7 all had their heads down, and they were not happy. But he said, I finally caught a couple of what they were saying to each other, and what they were saying was, "I don't like it, but he's right." Now that's profound. So deep in their bones, they know we can't continue doing this for 500 years. I mean, my question is, what can we do today and keep doing for 500 years? I mean, that's the horizon we need to look on. Like anything, difficulty breeds creativity. And so as long as you bail out difficulty with taxpayer subsidies, the farmers aren't going to get hungry enough or in enough difficulty to look at alternatives, and that's a shame. So the place to start, in my view, is actually not arguing over glyphosate. It's arguing over, does any business in the U.S. deserve or need, in the American free enterprise system, government interference? Period. Farming, cars, we shouldn't have bailed out the banks in 2008. We shouldn't have bailed out Chrysler in whatever it was, with Lee. No. You either stand or fall on your own merits. And when you do that, people become really, really ingenious about their decisions. What happens is, every time we bring in the government safety net, it creates decision deficit syndrome, because you don't have to suffer the consequences of your stupidity. So as soon as people have to suffer the consequences of their decisions, they're going to make better decisions. Yeah, so one of the things that's bandied about even RFK Jr. has mentioned it, is we don't need glyphosate. We can zap weeds with with laser beams. Again, we're not asking, do we need to grow crops that need to be weeded? On our farm, we use management intensive grazing to actually move the sward to a better place. This laser technology is, the machines are extremely expensive. The only place they've had any viability whatsoever is in extremely expensive things like mesclun mix, baby greens, things like that. Where a $3 million machine to zap a weed here and there, is workable. The technology's there. Again, it's like all technologies. What possible outcome could it mean to food if we start, zapping things with lasers all over the place? The EMFs given off by the machine that has to run across. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, there are so many things. Just to just cavalierly say, here's the new technology and there's no downside. Even the best, in automobiles, the downside is you have a wreck, kill yourself, every technology has a downside. And to just have this cavalier attitude that, now we've got this technology that has no downside, no consequences, it's hubris. It's just hubris. And so I don't buy it. And we'll see where it goes. Consistent with my unconventionality as a lunatic farmer, I've thought long and hard about what I can add to this momentous discussion today. So the People versus Poison rally was a rally on the Supreme Court steps. Actually, we were on the sidewalk out in front of the Supreme Court. A phalanx of 20 bicycle Capitol Police kept us from being able to actually step onto the steps of the Supreme Court. But there were a couple hundred people there for sure. The thing is, many of them were influencers. Moms Across America. Zen Honeycutt was there. There were numerous people who have millions of podcast viewers. So the crowd of 200 actually was representative of a lot more people than the actual 200 people there. And to show how odd how this battle is, here was Congressman Thomas Massey, ultra-conservative libertarian from Kentucky, and Congressman Cory Booker, ultra-liberal Democrat, and they were in agreement on this issue. So the title of the rally was People versus Poison. The theme was the people. We people, you could have said peasants, in medieval Europe, but here it's people. People don't want to be poisoned. And so, I was one of the 30 speakers there. And most people just railed, of course, against chemicals and poison. What I did was say, I think we're asking the wrong question. Everybody around here is asking a question. How can we stop glyphosate contamination? How can we stop poison from being put on our landscape? Which, it's a valid question. I said, no, the question to ask is, how do we restore the pre-European abundance of our landscape? Because most people think, thanks to glyphosate and thanks to Norman Borlaug and thanks to, chemicals and all this, we can feed ourselves. When actually North America produced more food 500 years ago than it does today. Now, it wasn't all eaten by people. There were 100 million bison, there were 200 million beavers that ate more vegetables. They're herbivores. They ate more vegetable material than all the people in North America today. There were passenger pigeons that blanked out the sun for 2 days when they flew over, long before Purdue and Tyson and Cargill. And the Lewis and Clark expedition, when they went out from St. Louis to the Pacific coast, they said they encountered a bear every single mile. Imagine, a bear every single mile that you see. Not the ones you don't see, but you see a bear every single mile. Bears eat a lot of stuff. When you add up the abundance of this landscape, the question that I have and the question that drives me on this farm is, how do we restore that resilience and flourishing and vibrancy and abundance of the pre-European landscape? That's the question we ought to be asking. And unfortunately, we're all in this we gotta outlaw the poison, outlaw the chemical and all that. And I'm not opposed to that. But we have a higher question we can ask, in my opinion. And the higher question is to sit down and say, how do we restore North America to 1400? And if we could answer that question, we'd be in business. Because we see this degradation all over the world. I mean, Australia, I was in Australia, guy's buying a 100,000 acre place, big place, 100,000 acres. And he had the original herd book of the first Britisher that bought that property in 1820. And for the first 40 years, that property had 28,000 cows. 28,000 cows. And of course they had calves. So imagine that's a big operation, okay? Today, 4,000 cows and they don't have enough to feed them. And that kind of degradation has happened it's happened everywhere in the world. The human footprint, unfortunately, is not generally a healing footprint. It's an abusive footprint, unfortunately. And so I think that's where we need to step back and actually, if we're honest with ourselves, honest with our womb here, we need to ask, how do we bring you back? What are the principles we bring you back? And they would be so far beyond glyphosate. It would be about water, it would be about soil, it would be about worms, it would be about multispeciation, it would be about pollinators, it would be about all these other things. That glyphosate is one little thing, but it doesn't take you very long. I've been to Washington numerous times. It doesn't take you long down there to realize nobody deals with real issues. They don't have time to deal with real issues. All they have time for is to just kick around the edges and fight over. I mean, nobody ever asks, do we need the bucket of money? All they ask is, which bucket should it go in? The Republicans think the money should go in this bucket. The Democrats think it should go in this bucket. You know, everybody's fighting over which bucket it should go in. I want to ask, well, why do we need a bucket? But nobody asks that because it's too deep. It's too systemic to ask that question. It's a lot easier to just fight over, which bucket gets the money. Let's use our God-given mechanical and mental ingenuity to restore, regenerate, and redeem. Thank you very much.